be talking about effective instruction for behavior change for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the adapted physical activity setting. So we are at our last lecture, number 10. This is called Effective Teacher for Behavior Change. I will have some follow-up lectures and podcasts for each module or each topic to go over any questions that I was asked or anything that I reflected that I thought I might need to go back over. So learning objectives for today's class, we'll be able to discuss and differentiate between the spectrum of different teaching styles. You should be able to discuss and differentiate between the four functions of behavior. You should be able to describe ways to deter these four behavior functions that we'll talk about. You should be able to understand what scaffolding instruction means, and you should be able to differentiate and describe the different types of instructional cues, and you should be able to describe ways to manage inappropriate behavior. So when it comes to effective teaching instruction, you want to take on a teaching style type, okay? So there's a spectrum. So we have a command approach, which is the most direct, teacher-directed forms of teaching. This is your traditional forms of teaching. And then you have more exploration, which is kind of free-form thinking. You give students the equipment and you allow them to create their own games. That's kind of where we're going here. Teacher-led or student-led styles. And so there's a multitude of teaching styles in between these two. We have going from command, we have a practice approach where you allow the students to practice the skills and then you kind of watch them practice. Reciprocal learning, so they're kind of mirroring you. You give them task, so you can give them task. You can provide cooperative learning where they learn in groups, or you create dilemmas or problems or games that involve cooperation. Then there's inclusion, which we've talked about a lot. There's guided discovery, where you give them options and tell them, to distinguish the issue or to solve a problem into problem solving. So guided discovery is you kind of let them figure out how to play something, and then problem solving, basically giving some type of obstacle to get through a problem. And then you have exploration, where you allow them to create their own task. So we're going to talk about each one in depth, then we're going to talk about behavior functions, and then we'll follow up into instructional cues and scaffolding instruction. So the command approach, this is the most common approach in adapted physical education because the teacher needs to be the leader and the focal point of the lesson. If you go into guided discovery and allow students to do whatever they want, or if you ask them, hey, what do you want to do today? They're going to say, play on my iPad, or they're going to say, sit down, or they might say, football when you have basketball planned. So one thing you don't want to do with a command approach is ask them what they want to do. A command approach means that you've planned and structured something that you're going to teach. So the teacher introduces commands and students follow those directions. Teacher intros activity through demo and explanation. So for example, all right, today we're gonna do some warm-up exercises. We're gonna start by just circling the neck. So you would show them and tell them and explain them what you're doing. Students are told where they will go and what they will do. All right, everybody, we're gonna create a circle. I want you to stand on top of a poly spot. So go ahead, everyone stands in a circle, everyone's on top of a poly spot. You tell them. Students begin on teacher's command and stop on teacher's command. So you might say, all right, when I say go, you're gonna start dribbling. When I say stop, you're gonna freeze and bring the ball over your head. So that's my start and stop strategy that I like as a command approach. Or I just say freeze, and that means you just stop. And if I say go, it means you go. Or when the music starts, you can go. Tasks may be repeated. So you might do the same task over and over again, just for more practice. So don't be afraid to stay on a task for a little bit longer if you feel like there's a need for it. And teacher closes lesson with a brief review. So this would be the command approach. So basically, do as I say, go where I want you to go, and perform these types of movements. And this gives the learner direct, explicitive, and simple direction. So there's no kind of confusion here. So that's why the command approach works best in adapted physical education. Remember to teach through movement. Try to avoid long periods, more than 30 seconds, of you talking without students giving a movement to perform. So you don't want to talk for more than 30 seconds. So the introduction is quick. You might have your students come into your class and start walking and talking. And then right when class starts, let's just say class starts at 1, they arrive at 12:55. I'm gonna have them walk and talk until 1. And then at 1 o'clock, I want them on their mats, or I want them in a circle, or I want them located in front of me so that I can see everyone and they can see my eyes and my mouth. Okay. Once I get everyone set up, I'm gonna say, hey everyone, how's everyone doing? I might ask them a quick question, and then I'm gonna say, all right, let's go ahead and get warmed up. What I want everyone to do is start by getting, on the poly spots in a circle, get some personal space. We're gonna start with some neck rotations, and then boom, we've already started. It only takes about 30 seconds. And then, all right, now we're gonna do some shoulder rotations. So I only took about 2 or 3 seconds to say it, and then I start performing it, and then they're gonna just mirror you. So the more that you can mirror movement, the better. So this is like a group fitness style instruction. And so like if a yoga class is typically gonna be command approach, Pilates class, any type of biking class. So everyone's just focused on the instructor. The instructor needs a lot of knowledge and experience to pull this off, because if you choose the wrong options, or if you don't have the right cues, or if you don't have the right teaching, if you're not knowledgeable, then people aren't going to pay attention. So the practice approach: the teacher provides students with the activity that they will complete and subsequently moves throughout the instructional area while providing feedback. So practice is, for me, I perform this during the initial sports skills stage. So when I'm teaching sports, I start with a warm-up. It's going to be mobility, stability, core, strength, and we'll do some dynamic stretching, cooperative games like kickboxing and dance, or yoga. And then, so there's our kind of warm-up. And then while I'm doing the warm-up, or while I'm about to teach my first soccer skill, let's just say it's toe taps, where they just tap the ball with the bottom of their shoe, and then they switch. So they're just tapping the ball, and then they're kind of going back and forth. I might go around and watch them throughout the area and give them feedback. So a command approach, you might just tell them what to do, and you might not walk around and give more cues. You might just give general cues to the group. But with a practice approach, you're giving specific cues, specific feedback to each individual. So when I teach sports skills, and sometimes when I'm teaching fitness, especially with push-ups and squats and sit-ups, I will have to go around and while they're performing these exercises, and then give them cues. So I would say that while you're working on your command approach, you can also have a little bit of a practice approach within your teaching area. So you don't have to just stand at the front of the class the whole time and explain. You can go out and provide instructional feedback while the students are practicing the positions. It might be something like the crow pose, for example, or some type of tree pose, or some type of balance pose, where you might have to give additional cues or supports to individuals. So practice approach means that you're able to give everyone a little bit more feedback. With that command approach, if you have students with severe disabilities, you need to have a para-educator or a peer assistant working with them. Otherwise, you're going to have to be the one that works with that student. So make sure that you have para-educators, peer assistants working on your behalf and echoing what you are saying as a command approach. During the practice approach, you're going to be going around and giving people demonstrations, explanations of the learning task. You're going to ask if students have questions and respond to those questions. So you're going to give them more of a voice in a practice approach. Students, because in a command approach, you might not ask questions, because if you ask questions, it might open the door for more questions and you might get set back. So a command approach is kind of strict. It's like, no, we're doing this, and that. Practice approach is a little bit more open. Students begin practicing the task alone, with partners, or in a group. So just like when I teach sports skills, we usually start teaching them alone, and then we have them work with partners, and then we have them work with groups. And so in this practice approach, we're able to give different groups, different individuals feedback. Teacher moves through students' groups and provides feedback, and teacher closes lesson with a brief review. So reciprocal teaching, students begin to assume responsibility for their own learning and assisting their peers by serving in a peer teaching capacity. So reciprocal teaching is going to be great for unified PE, where you have one student who serves a role as a peer teacher, and then you have one student who is a learner or a mentee. So you have a mentor-mentee approach. This is like your unified PE approach, or this is how I teach my lab settings. So before the lesson, the teacher prepares a task sheet that explains the roles of the peer teacher in learning, including visuals, diagrams, and key points about the task to be performed. So the teacher is going to provide the mentors or the peer tutors or paraeducators or volunteers of the program the information about what they're going to be teaching to the learners. The teacher or the coordinator describes the task sheet and roles of peer teacher and learner to the task. So you're going to give them roles and responsibilities. You might say, this is what I want. I want you to be at station 1, and I want you to learn the cues for the squat. Here are the visuals for the squat. Here are the cues for the squat. All right, go to station 1 and get ready to teach, and then we're going to have students rotate around stations. Or you could tell them that they're going to have a lesson plan for a couple individuals with a disability, and so you're giving them a 60-minute lesson plan. So you got to give them the roles, and you got to explain the roles, what they're going to be doing in the class. You're going to explain and demo the learning activity. So let's just say there's 4 stations in the gym. You have 8 mentors or 8 peer mentors or assistants. You're going to have 2 go to each station, and then you're going to explain and demo the activity. So let's just say you have a squat station, a push-up station, and then you have a lunge station, and then maybe like a horizontal row station. And so you're going over each of the cues at each station, and then you have them go to their stations and wait for the students to come in, and then you have the peer mentees go through each station. One student serves in roles of peer teacher, and the other is in role learner. So you have a student with a disability and without disability. Child complete the task sheet with the peer teacher making appropriate checks. So you'll give them a task sheet for each station, and the children will complete it through each station. So they might say, how many reps and sets did you perform, and how much weight did you use? What were the modifications that you used? And so that you're using task sheets for the peer mentors to give them some type of information, as opposed to just letting them wing it. The teacher moves from group to group, providing feedback primarily to the peer teacher, suggesting how to improve the performance of their learners. So the teacher's goal is to kind of help the mentors out, and the mentor's goal is to help the mentees out, and it's kind of like a top-down approach. Students switch roles. Okay, we probably won't do this in adapted PE, or sorry, unified PE, but if this was in general PE situation, we could do that if we wanted to. Teacher may provide a review and feedback to the group at the end of the lesson. So again, this can be done for just general PE students, where you have general PE students work on practicing how to be a mentor with their peers, or it could be in a unified PE program. Task. So teacher provides students with a comprehensive list of all of the tasks in a unit of instruction, so like gymnastics, and asks them to try new skills as they master others. So teacher presents a task card to students. Okay, those tasks the teacher will then demonstrate those tasks listed on the card. Students are allowed to work independently, making decisions about starting, stopping, and which tasks to perform. So let's just say the task where the topic is yoga, maybe it's the sun salutation, and then you have different steps on the task card that represent the sun salutation, and then you'll go over the sun salutation, and then students will work independently on each task or each component of the sun salutation. They're allowed to work independently. Teacher circulates throughout the activity area, speaking to the students about the choices they are making and their performance outcomes. Once students are able to adequately perform the task, it is checked off by the learner or peer observer. So a task type of teaching style might be more for general PE students. Cooperative learning is going to be great for unified or adaptive PE, because it's going to get people involved in social interaction. So, similar to reciprocal learning, this style is designed to encourage team building and interdependence and cooperation. Students are placed onto teams of mixed ability and they work together to achieve a common goal. Teacher explains the task, objective, and student groupings and student roles. The activity is organized in a way that learning goal achievement is dependent on the socially constructed exchange of information between learners in the group. And students work through activity until all group members successfully complete it. So it might be a situation like Hungry Hippo's Family Dinner. This is a game where students are given the objective of preparing a meal for Hippo and their family that includes all food groups, as many of each food group as they can grab. Each colored beanbag corresponds to a food group. They need to get the food from the hippo's pond using the scooter, then place them in a bucket where two other team members work to relay the food to the meal prep station, one bag at a time, traveling the hula hoop obstacle course. Groups then have 3 minutes to prepare as much food as possible. Teacher stops the lesson, prompts students with questions about how the teams could improve their strategies and change roles. Teams have 3 minutes to plan, then the activity is repeated with students in different roles. So that's a game kind of getting them thinking about not only exercise but nutrition. I love adding health and nutrition in lesson plans, and getting them involved in obstacle courses like scooters and beanbags is also going to be super fun. So teacher stops the students, and then each team uses a large butcher sheet of paper to draw their hippo's meal, counting the number of each food group and listing their team strategy, drawing a diagram of their team strategy, and then hang posters up around the classroom. Students perform a gallery walk for a cool down. So that's kind of an awesome cooperative learning activity. Inclusive strategies or inclusions teaching. The learners provided with a learning task and then allowed to make a larger number of decisions related to the task. All children are designed to experience success while being challenged to select the most appropriate means of completing a task students choose. So teacher will present the task to student and tells them that they will be able to make a number of decisions related to completing the task. Sheets, activity options written out are optional. So let's just say you're telling them to dribble a basketball. Well, you can dribble a basketball with your right hand, your left hand, with 2 hands. If you want to dribble around the court, you can. So I'm just going to let you kind of decide what skills you want to perform, and I'll give you a list of those skills. I'll demo them, and then I'll give you a sheet of paper, and you can work on those with a partner. So students independently practice the task and make decisions. Teachers moves from one student to another, assessing their performance and asking questions as a means of helping them determine if they're making appropriate decisions. So this is basically like the practice approach, but you're giving them a checklist of things that they can perform during that time. Guided discovery. So this entails asking students a series of questions and posing a succession of challenges that are designed to guide them to independently discover the correct solution to a challenge without being told by the teacher. This is more advanced, so this probably wouldn't be performed in adapted PE or unified PE. This would be more for general PE. It is assumed that if a student arrives at the answer themselves, it may be more memorable and more powerful effect than if the teacher were to provide the solution. So teacher posed a challenge question to the class. This may be adaptable for people with autism spectrum disorder or mild intellectual disability. Students explore, practice the challenge, and attempt to arrive at an answer. So you're getting them interested in some type of problem that they have to correct or solve. And so they might find this interesting. And then teacher anticipates students' responses and continues asking questions and provides challenges until students arrive at the desired response. So you're helping them along this challenge and you're helping them solve the problem. And you're giving them kind of hints. And then teacher does not provide the answer, but continues asking questions until students generate the correct response. So you're asking them questions, you're getting them involved in a problem solution, and you're helping them answer the question, but you're allowing them to find it for themselves. So this is called guided discovery. Problem solving. So this is when we give the students a problem, series of problems, and the children or students are encouraged to be creative and arrive at as many solutions as possible. So you might say, all right, we're going to kick the ball as hard as we can at the wall. What part of our foot should we kick the ball with? The toe, the inside, or the outside? So you might give them, that might be some more basic language for someone with an intellectual disability. Um, Creativity is promoted. Encourage children to develop their own solutions and not simply mimic the response of others. So teachers present a series of movement challenges to the class. Students respond by using their bodies to solve the problems posed. So you might say, all right, you have to get to the other side, but you only can walk on the islands, and the islands are made out of hula hoops, poly spots, and scarves, and mats, and you have a scooter, and you have to get to the other side of the gym. New movement challenges are added based on students' previous responses. Example, after performing your step combination on your right foot, your goal is to perform that same combination with a left lead. However, the challenge is that you are not able to tap with your left foot. So this would be more for um, tap dancing. So giving them some problems, maybe it's a more simplistic, like I was talking about when it comes to like a soccer strategy, something that they can understand, or it can be pretty high involvement, which would be probably more for general PE students. Exploration, best suited for younger children who are still exploring their bodies and how to use equipment. Teacher would consider what movements or pieces of equipment they want students to explore. So you might just start, we're going to start bending and stretching and curling our bodies. When the music starts, go ahead and start performing that. And you might just watch them explore and just have them kind of move to the music and explore their own kind of bending and shape twisting. You could tell them, teacher would provide students with perimeters related to exploring, particularly in relation to safety. So you're giving them perimeters of where they can and can't go. Students would explore while being supervised by the teacher. So you might say, all right, now I'm going to turn the music on, and here's a basketball. You can dribble the basketball around the court however fast you want, or in whatever way you want, in tune to the music. So that would be kind of exploring basketball. Students would be given an opportunity to share their explorations with others. So I want everyone to kind of choose how you want to dribble the ball around the court with the music on, and then I'm going to have each of the students kind of show an example of how that was done. Another exploration game would be freeze dance, where you can create your own dance when the music starts. When I say freeze, everyone freezes. I'm going to select the best frozen dancer, then they're going to show their dance to the class, and then freeze, and then we'll have the next student show their dance to the class. So everyone's kind of creating their own dance when music is on, and then we'll freeze and then select different dancers. So now we're into behavior change. After we've gone over the teaching styles, we're going to start talking about the 4 functions of behavior. So why do students act out? There's 4 main responses or 4 main functions of behavior, which are social attention, tangibles or activities, escape or avoidance, and sensory stimulation or automatic response. So we're going to talk about each one in depth here. So social attention. Students will act up or cause behavioral problems because they want attention. They want people to look at them. For some kids, it's better to obtain bad attention than no attention at all. So just understand that kids, individuals, intellectual and developmental disabilities, even people without disabilities are going to want social attention, and bad attention is better than no attention at all for some of these individuals. So just understand that social attention is a driving force, and even if it's bad attention, so like, hey, don't do that, they might enjoy that. They might appreciate that. So social attention is no acting up. So no attention is no acting up. When we have extinction or planned ignoring of that attention, this will tell the student that we're no longer giving them what they want. So if there is no attention, there might not be no acting up. Because if you give attention to their, whatever their behavior function is, let's just say they want social attention, so they start screaming or they start throwing something, and you just ignore that, they might start stopping that behavior. So the more attention they receive, the more they act up. Give your attention to deserving kids with on-task behavior. So focus on the students that are doing the right thing, because if you keep going toward the students that are doing the wrong thing, they're going to think, the students that are doing the right thing are going to think that they need to act up to get some attention. So make sure that you're just striving to give people attention to who deserve getting attention to. Okay. And it might be hard for you to ignore misbehavior. So just understand that sometimes your own biases get in the way of that, or maybe you're hungry and that kind of sets you off a little bit. So just understand that you want to take your own emotion out of it when you're trying to ignore these behaviors. So social attention, big board, earn choice. So students who were good listeners and not on task earn big board choice. So basically, if you're a good listener and you're not looking for social attention, you'll get some reward. So students who was off task works one-on-one with Mrs. Charlo and completes a condensed version of missed content due to behavior. Student earns big board choice once compliant and on task. So active students equal a win-win situation. So basically, if you are on task, okay, you can earn a big board choice. And so if you tell them that, if you're acting up or if you are trying to get this attention, then you're not going to get your big board choice. So this might deter some of those negative behaviors. So that is a great reward system for people who want social attention. So tangibles or activities, the students wants to gain access to a specific toy or desired activity. So basically, they want their spoon, or they want something that's going to take the focus off of PE. So they want their iPad. They want something specific. Solutions, so first, then strips, or big board choice. But the best solution is first, then. So the PREMAC principle. So first, we want you to run around the track, then you're going to be able to use the scooter that you want to use. Okay, student works to earn an activity or tangible of students' focused desire. It's a win-win situation. So you get them to do what you want and they get to do what they want. Okay, so when students have an activity or a tangible item that they want, use that to your advantage and their advantage in adaptive PE if that's the only way you can get them. If this is how you're going to solve the problem behavior, and this is what you're going to have to do. Okay, you can also do choice. You can give them choices. It creates buy-in, so you can give them different choices of what they can earn. So you can tell them, if you run around the track, I'm going to let you use the big board choice board to figure out whatever you want to do as a reward. And so you might have like 10 different things on there, and they might really enjoy several of them. And so they might just really like the big board choice award for behavior change. Some students will act up or have negative behavior because they're trying to escape or avoid getting out of an activity. Maybe they just don't feel like moving. They don't feel like socially participating. These students are students that will kind of sit out a lot, might start crying, are more in tune for social isolation. So two solutions, either the big board choice, so we allow them to choose or we tell them that if they participate that they'll get a big board choice, or if there's something that they enjoy, we'll allow them to get that activity tangible if they perform the activity first. So these would be the two solutions for escaping and avoidance. An automatic or self-stimulation response. So the student enters an enjoyable self-stimulating activity or a well-practiced automatic response, which is soothing and helps them feel safe in their environment. You can use this to your advantage as well. So some of them enjoy clapping or self-stimulation, and this helps them feel safe. This is an example of someone who has autism spectrum disorder. This may be one of their characteristics. This is a repetitive behavior that the individual enjoys. These behaviors may help a person with autism calm down: flapping hands, clapping, spinning in a circle, rocking, jumping up and down. So these might be some pre-max strategies you can use with the individual to get them to perform. So like, all right, we're going to perform a track lap, and then you can use trampoline. okay? And you can go back to your self-stimulation, but you have to do the reward first. So automatic or self-stimulation response. You may not win this battle, but first check with the educational staff and have a team game plan. So this might not be something that people want. Ignore the behavior unless they are endangering themselves or others. So if they're hand clapping or if they're doing something that's not endangering anyone else, you don't have to, you just ignore it. Safety is always first. So if they are doing that next to a wall, then you obviously want to get them away from the wall. Use the behavior to your advantage. Help them move. So if they like jumping, maybe make more jumping activities. If they like spinning, maybe add more spinning activities. If they like clapping activities, maybe have more dancing with clapping involved. So use their self-stimulation to kind of work along with their behavior. And then use the first 10 strips with highly preferred activity. These are research evidence-based strategies. You can also use a big board choice, escape, or avoidance for all of your functions of behavior. So if the students are trying to avoid the activity, if they're trying to play another activity, which is on the big board choice, then you have to have some type of big board choice board that they can get a reward from. So you can use this to your advantage as an instructor to get them to do what you would like. So remember, social attention, tangibles activities, escape or avoidance, and sometimes sensory stimulation, automatic response to situation. These are the 4 functions of behavior. So remember, it's all about relationships. So the more you develop relationship with the student, the more they're going to trust you, and the more they trust you, the more you're going to be able to just have a comfortable lesson and probably maybe not even use reward choices boards. I don't have to use big board choices in my classes. I do have to use pre-MAC principles, but generally speaking, my students listen to most and are pretty on task for most of my lessons. I have peer mentors that help them stay on task, but we will use a big board choice award, or we will use a coin or token system for some students. So if they do the right thing, they get a token, and if they get 10 tokens, they get to use the big board choice. So tokens is another means to change behavior. That can also be a part of the big board choice. Remember, to be successful, we must make sure we communicate in a manner most appropriate to meets and enhance our students' individual learning styles. So making sure that we're talking within their communication pathway. Behavior plans. ADHD is very colorful. It prevents, so we'll talk a little bit about ADHD. It presents differently in every person. We have a responsibility to be proactively set up to our students for success. So behavior plans for people with ADHD may be more prevalent than people without ADHD. So ADHD, attention deficit, hyperdeficit, is going to deter them from staying on task more so than any other disability, because they're not able to pay attention, so they're going to be off task. And as an educator, we have to try to prevent them from becoming off task. So you may have here's an example of a student that you may have to implement a behavior plan for, and this I've seen behaviors like this in elementary, middle, and high school. So some students may get pleasure out of unsafe behaviors. So Caleb, he has ADHD and a little bit of narcissism, okay? And so these can work together to promote unsafe behaviors like running and darting at others, sneaking up behind and purposely scaring others, jumping out at others and growling. These behaviors were followed by a passive-aggressive, challenging smile. Students and staff did not feel safe. Very immature and inappropriate behavior for an 8th grader. It's time to implement a behavior plan. So you're going to have behavior plans for students. There might be students who are in special education strictly for behavioral plans and behavioral deficits, and that they aren't able to maintain appropriate social behaviors in the general education setting. And so there might be behavioral classes specifically for individuals who have these characteristics. So the staff collaboration in anticipation of PE, in case, so you have to be, the antecedents are what's going, you want to be able to prevent things, but so you have to know what could happen. So Caleb runs out of special ed classroom. Caleb runs down the hall. He does not listen to the TAs to stop. He then continues to run into the gym, darting and weaving through every other student with a crazed, passive, aggressive facial expression. Caleb cannot calm himself down at the start of the class and continues to challenge staff by being disrespectful, lying down during directions, poking the person nearest to him. So we have to have a behavior plan specific to the antecedent. Okay? Antecedent is what happens before the problem occurs. So you have to have engagements with each of these scenarios. So if Caleb runs in the hall, he must walk back to the place he started running and walk from there to the gym. So you don't engage the behavior and the problem in the gym, you engage the initial him running down the hallway. Okay. If Caleb breaks any other school rules, he must once again turn around and walk back to the place of the infraction. So he can't leave and go to the gymnasium until he goes to the gymnasium the right way. He can't just run and dart down the hallway, weave in and out. He's got to start from square one. So this is how we would, so the antecedent is preventing him from weaving in the first place in the gymnasium. Okay. Once he is in the gymnasium and has arrived with appropriate behavior, he starts on a 3-strike rule. The first infringement intention is set him up for success with a reminder. So the first kind of strike is just, hey, reminding you that you're going to have strikes, that you have behavior expectations. And after the 3rd strike, Caleb must return to class and lose all classroom points, starting with 4 points. So if you earn 4 points by the end of the day, you'll get a big board choice. And if you lose those points, you will not get big board choice. So these are the ways that you will lose your big board choice. The things that you want to do, right? You want your iPad, you want to jump on the trampoline, you want to do all these things, but in order to get all these things, you have to go through the process and you have to go school the right way. So this would be a behavior plan specific to the antecedent. So rock, paper, scissors, let's just say students don't know how to solve conflicts. Some do understand and others might need to be taught. So for example, there's winning and losing in PE. And so how can we teach someone how to win and lose? Well, play rock, paper, scissors. This might be a game where you teach them, all right, it's okay to win and lose, and you're gonna win some, I'm gonna win some, and that is fair. And it's okay to have some competition. So let's just say Colin, a behavior management plan to accept defeat. You could take rock, paper, scissors because it's a game of fun, and you could teach Colin, who needed to learn that defeat can still be fun. He can play, and then friendships are the most important factor. So first, teach them how to play rock, paper, scissors. Tell them that laughter makes the game fun. So that's a rule. Partner state which direction they want to walk down the hall. Stand back on the command, RPS, jump and turn and play your hand motion, RPRS, rock, paper, or scissor. Winner gets to walk in the direction they choose. Loser must graciously accept. So if I win, I get to walk in the direction I choose. If you win, you get to walk in the direction that you choose. And so this is kind of like a game that you could take a student in the hallway and play. And so you're kind of walking around the hallways playing, and it's okay to win and lose. And so loser must graciously accept. Winners, everyone's a winner if we all just agree to agree. So we're going to play this game of rock, paper, scissors. Sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose. I'm going to walk this way, you can walk that way. And then this might be a way to kind of teach people how to accept defeat. Set student learning outcomes to reflect needs. It is considered a success if Caden stands or crouches within a typical proximity to others. So some students may have some social emotional learning deficits with their peers in PE. They might not want to be near people. They might not want to be in a proximity toward others. So the goal might just be to get in a proximity to others. So it is considered success if we can get Caden to crouch or stand within a typical proximity to others. So this might be a student learning outcome. And the justification of this is because it may not be involved in PE, but would not be involved in PE activity in a self-contained adaptive PE class either. So we want to accept, acknowledge, and focus on individual-based needs. Some students are going to have different emotional needs, behavioral needs, social needs, and we're kind of meeting them where they're at. And so some objectives might be just, can we get them in proximity of others inside the gymnasium? I've had students that wouldn't even go inside the gymnasium. So the goal was, hey, how long can we keep them in the gymnasium? First day we could get them in 0. Next day 5 minutes. Next day was like 10 minutes. And then eventually we had them in for 60 minutes. And then it was about how can we keep them on task and involved in the activities, because sometimes he would just sit there and not participate. So, you got to think outside the box when it comes to student learning outcomes. Okay, we're going to get into, sorry about that. When it comes to opening up the opportunity gap, this is an awesome concept to think about when we think of our students with special needs. So think about the opportunities instead of kind of the trials or the tribulations or challenges. So if they're not able to perform something, think of the opportunity it would be to get them to perform that, instead of, oh, like, woe is me, woe is them. Again, accept, acknowledge, and focus on individual-based needs. It's okay that they are not able to perform all tasks. We don't want to focus on the negative. Focus on the positives, focus on what they can do, and focus on an opportunity gap. So the golden ticket: set expectations, focus on choice, allowing student to feel in control, and unlock student potential. So when it comes to choice, you might say, all right, do you want to jog fast or slow? Do you want to walk fast or slow? So you're giving them some options so they feel like they're able to make a choice when they are making a decision. Scaffolding instruction. So now we're going to get into instructional strategies specific to cues and instruction. So scaffolding is an instructional strategy that you can use when a child cannot do something independently and the teacher needs to provide help in some way to have them do the task, skill, activity. So basically, we're going to start with the least restrictive environment, or the least restrictive cue we can, and then we're going to use the most restrictive cue that we will use, and we'll scaffold these instructional cues, and we'll talk about that today. So we call this the least intrusive prompts, aka hierarchy of prompts and cues. So when you are teaching a student who is not able to do a skill independently, yet you will scaffold instruction. One way to scaffold is to provide verbal, visual, or physical prompt or cue. A verbal cue, like elbow up, is the least intrusive cue because you don't have to touch them, you don't have to show them, you don't have to give them a visual. So it's the least intrusive. A visual cue, like showing the elbow up every time before the child throws, is more intrusive. So if you show them a picture every time before they throw, that is more intrusive. They have to do more thinking to look at that than to hear something. A physical prompt, like touching their elbow or even moving their body part to get their elbow up, is the most intrusive. Okay, so if you touch them or physically move them to get in the right position, that's going to be the most intrusive. So people who have physical disabilities or moderate to severe disabilities are going to probably need the most physical prompting. Students with autism and moderate or intellectual disabilities might need some visual cues, and then hopefully you eventually want to scaffold them to general PE student, where you'd have just verbal cues. Okay, we can move from most intrusive to gradually taking off a lot of support and decrease to a least intrusive cue prompt so that they will do it independently. Okay, this is a good example of gradually removing scaffolding Okay, and you can read more about that in your book. So instructional cues we'll talk about next. So catching cues, something like tracking the ball. So all you would have to say is track. That way they understand that they have to track that ball with your eyes as all the way to your hands. So when you're catching a ball, all you would say is track, but you might explain before track the ball with your eyes and then track, and eventually you just say track, and they eventually will have it in their brain. Oh, track meaning watch the ball. Okay, so you don't say track the ball with your eyes all the way to your hands anymore. You'll eventually just say track. So the goals of instructional cues of verbal prompting is to say as least as possible to get the best response. So when you reach the arms toward the ball, you could just say reach. You're gonna give with the ball as the ball hits the hands to make a soft catch. So when you get the ball, you kind of give a little bit. You don't want really strong hands. You have to kind of loosen up a little bit to make a soft catch. If you have really hard hands and you don't loosen up, you'll have kind of a block hands, and it'll kind of you either stub your fingers or you won't catch it. Pinkies and thumbs, pinkies together if ball is below waist. Pinkies, thumbs together if ball is above waist. So if you're catching a ball that's below the waist, the pinkies are together. If you're catching a ball that is above the waist, you're going to bring your thumbs together, okay? Move your feet quickly to get into the position to catch the ball, or you would just say quick feet. So you want to make sure that when they're catching a ball, they move their feet to catch the ball. So these are all the different instructional cues you would use when catching. Okay, and you could show them a visual of tracking. You could show them a visual of the pinkies and thumbs if it's below the waist or above the waist, or you physically prompt them by taking their hands and putting them together, or you would kind of maybe tap their hands if you want them to kind of relax them when they're catching the ball. Underhand throw and overhand throw, some other instructional skills that you could teach your class, and then the cues for them. Here's an example of a verbal prompt. So you want to bring your head back when you are back doing a backstroke, right? So that you might just say head back in the pool. A visual prompt here we have, oops, a visual prompt is when you put your hand on something and use your hand, or you show them a picture of something that you want them to perform. So a visual prompt, instead of saying something, you might say, you might point at it, you might touch it. So you're giving them some type of visual of where to go, what to do. Example of physical or tactile prompt to improve leg position. You might literally hold on to the golf club, or help them position their hands while they're about to swing a golf club. If they were blind or had visual impairments, you might have to physically help them and provide them enough, I guess, physical prompting to get them in the right position. People with visual impairments especially are going to need probably the most tactile or physical prompting, and they're going to need a lot of verbal prompting obviously as well, because they're not going to be able to see anything, so you're going to have to be doing a lot of talking. So when you have school-wide expectations for social behavior, this is going to help set your behavioral outcomes in your classroom. So whatever the school-wide behavioral expectations are for what are the appropriate ways to act in a hallway, in a classroom, in the gymnasium, you're going to use those same expectations. So you want to identify 3 to 5 expectations that you want your students to know. You want them to be short statements. You want them to be positive statements, what to do and what not to do, and what to avoid doing. You want them to make them memorable. And here are some examples. So be respectful, be responsible, be kind, be safe, be a friend, be there, be ready, hands and feet to self, respect self, others' property, do your best, follow directions of adults. So those would just be some examples of social behavior expectations that students should identify with. So you want to teach behavioral expectations. You want to transform broad school-wide expectations into specific observable behaviors. You can use a settings matrix, which we'll look at, which is an example kind of template of like how to set up behaviors and expectations. You want to teach the words and the actions. So you want to show them what the actions look like of the words, like what does it mean to be respectful? What does it mean to be safe? And show them what it looks like. You want to build a social culture that is predictable and focus on student success. So you might have different locations, whether that's gymnasium, pool, hallway, and you might have different expectations for those locations for the specific student. So this might be, homeroom, gymnasium, lunch, and they might all have different types of expectations for each. So when it comes to teaching behavioral expectations, first you want to define the expectation, provide a rationale why that's important, teach the critical discrimination, demonstrate the appropriate behavior, demonstrate the unacceptable behavior, and then practice telling the difference with multiple examples. If there is a signal, teach the signal. When should the appropriate behavior occur? Teach for fluency and practice, teach reinforcement, and then how will this skill be maintained? So these would be some teaching expectations for behavior. Some continuum of consequences. Do not ignore problem behavior unless ignoring is part of the specific program. So when it comes to social attention and ignoring that, that should be part of the behavioral plan. That shouldn't just be something you do that day because you feel like ignoring them. It should be because there's a behavioral plan in place. Based on maybe big board choice, based on the pre-MAC principle with getting this, then that, or a coin token society where they get rewards and coins and then they get to choose a big board choice. So make sure that you're not ignoring it unless it's part of the behavior plan. Otherwise, define specific teacher responses for minor and major problem behavior. So know what's a minor behavior, know what a minor negative behavior it is, and know what a major negative problem behavior is. Because if you are treating them both the same, you need to have, then you're gonna be giving the wrong response to the behavior. Define a general rule for when a teacher should send a student to the office. Do not expect the office referrals to change behavior. Sometimes sending them to the office, to the principal, or somewhere else, that might not change the behavior. So use office referrals to prevent problem behavior from being rewarded, to prevent escalation, and prevent problem behavior from interrupting ongoing instruction. So if it's preventing ongoing instruction, or if it's starting to escalate, or if the problem behavior is being rewarded, then they may go to the office. Using teacher to change behavior is the most important. There's a website here for behavioral definitions and for problem behavior. So if you want to look up behavioral definitions, you can go there. Remember, discipline is the application and enforcement of rules and limits. We want to be disciplined as teachers, and we want students to understand that there's expectations, especially in a group scenario. So know what you want and what you don't want. Show and tell the child or student what you want. When you get what you want, acknowledge it. So make sure that they understand that you're grateful, and when you get something else, act quickly and appropriately. Room group arrangement for effective discipline. Be able to see all and hear all. Make sure that you can see everyone in your room at all times. Never have your back to students. So this is if you're being evaluated by an administrator, one thing they don't want to see is your back to students. For group arrangement is the most important. So have enough room so that there's no crawling over each other when moving to get something. Materials should be available but not out to play with yet. And designate places if that will keep the peace. So use poly spots on the ground if you need to space them out, or hula hoops. Don't provide the basketballs or soccer balls or the equipment until you're ready to play with them, because they will just play with the equipment until you tell them not to. So you make sure you have any type of equipment like that is seductive to kind of your learners, not out so that they can't use it when they get in the gym. Be proactive, so use positive behavior support. Identify expectations for behavior, like our rule cards remind students often of those rules. What are the pool rules? What are the gym rules? No running on deck. You have to have equipment at your lane. There has to be a lifeguard in the pool before you get in. Mentor in first, mentor out last. Um, take breaks when needed, get water when needed. Those might be some rules. Respect the lifeguard, respect the teacher, those types of things. Play safely, and then remind them of them often. Okay, it's not something that just you say on the first day and then goes away. You have to keep reminding them what the rules and expectations are. Some of them may have some memory loss, remember that, or might not understand what the rules are. Do not develop rules that you are unwilling to enforce. So if you're not going to enforce them, don't make them up. Make sure that you do enforce them. Verbalize safety concerns. So tell them why there might be a safety concern, and then tell them how you'll begin and end an activity. So this is how we're going to begin it. This is how we're going to end it, so that they will understand the expectations, so they're not so anxious before. That's why you want to tell them how many things you're going to do, for how long you're going to do it, or how many reps you're going to do it for. Not only because that is the most measurable and most peer-reviewed way to teach, but because it also lowers anxiety and stress of the learner. So proactive positive behavior support, catch them being good. Most important thing you can do is catch them doing the right thing, and then give them positive feedback for being good. It's probably the best thing you can do for your students. Always catch them being good, and do that the entire lesson plan. Try not to catch them being bad. DL is a boy who has some developmental disability. So here's a real life example. He is integrated into an after-school swim program with 10 other junior high boys. He has attention issues, slower processing of information in a group, and an extreme sensitivity to loud noises. What do we do to prevent a meltdown? What would be some ways we can prevent meltdowns, maybe for someone with autism spectrum disorder? So address the environment with the individual before you go to the environment. Provide support for prevention of poor choices. So if there is a poor choice made, what are the repercussions, and what are the expectations? So what rewards will they get if they have positive or good choices? Watch for triggers and intercept them. So understand if there's someone that is a bully in the pool and are going to trigger the student, intercept that. Don't let that occur. Okay, if you see someone's doing something unsafe, or if you see a trigger is about to happen, you need to intercept it. Remind the individual what they are to do. Be positive, give positive reinforcement for making the right positive choices. So give them coins, or give them tell them that they can get their choice after they perform the positive choice. What to think about, what strategies have worked with the individual before I worked with them, or what strategies have worked with him with other teachers. How will this strategy impact the rest of my class? So if I don't intercept this bully from picking on him and triggering him, what will be the impact of the entire class? So that's why you have to kind of intercept any type of bullying, or anything that would cause a meltdown of a student, or a student with a disability might get discouraged, or feel socially isolated. So you have to think about these strategies and how they will impact your class. And does the student have an IEP or behavior intervention plan? So making sure that you understand that the student could have an IEP that have social and cognitive short and long-term goals that you need to be focused on when you're working with them. How do we face the challenge? So answer these. What are the behaviors that I need to be addressed? How often do they occur? What strategies will I systematically employ? What help do I need to do this? And what do I do when he or she gets overwhelmed? So answer these questions for the specific individual to help with behavior plans. You have to have a systematic strategy to employ that will help them stay on task, reduce negative behaviors, and to increase time on task with their peers. Strategies for managing inappropriate behavior in a positive manner. So, prevention, so be proactive. Don't allow it to happen in the first place if you can. Proximity control, so be around that individual often, be in the right spot at the right time. Signal inference, so understand that different signals in the gym can cause different changes in the individual. Have appropriate structure and organization, and then increase adult to child ratio if you need to take away inappropriate behavior. So if you can, have the parent involved. If it's an adaptive physical activity program, if it's a unified PE program, have a couple more, maybe a paraeducator working with the individual, or an adult, or a teacher assistant instead of a peer assistant, or maybe you, the teacher, have to kind of work alongside that individual during the class. Proactive strategies, so ignore, redirect, and reinforce behavior. Use of name and eye contact. So say their name. That usually gets a response if you say their name. Sometimes if you don't know their name or say their name, they won't even look at you. Monitor a group carefully to head off outbursts. So make sure that you're monitoring the flow of the class. You might see someone getting in a social conflict here. You might see someone getting frustrated over here. You might see someone physically unable to do something here. And so you might have to kind of make sure that you're moving around and helping these different situations, so that we can reduce inappropriate behavior in a positive manner. We want to partner up and make groups, myself as a teacher, and not let girls choose. I'm not sure what that meant. Don't not let girls choose. So, or boys choose, it probably should say. So don't let the girls or boys choose who they want to work with. Sometimes they'll just want to work with themselves. What not to do: take it too personally, get too emotionally involved, scream and scream. That's not going to help anyone. Hold onto the incident, so hold on to it and take a grudge. Call excessive attention to the person. We don't want to give them too much attention. It can cause a bigger outburst or a bigger meltdown. We don't want to touch, tug, or push. We don't want to use phrases that are labels. We don't want to be inconsistent, and we don't want to use consequences that are not meaningful or appropriate. Okay, so these are the things not to do to de-escalate inappropriate behavior, especially scream, verbal, physical abuse, something that you definitely would get fired for. And so a lot of these things can be liabilities as well. So what is your style? Right now, think of a student that annoy you or not doing what you want. What is your style? Are you a yeller, a guilt maker, avoider, addresser, or are you going to be a proactive teacher? Okay, because you can avoid the situation, and unless it's part of the behavior plan that's appropriate. Are you going to address the situation? Are you going to be a guilt maker, make them feel bad? Are you going to yell at them? Or are you going to be a proactive teacher? The most common behaviors we face as teachers are inattention, lack of respect of others, lack of respect of materials, lack of understanding of directions, excessive talking, wanderer, and hyperactive. So you're going to have students that won't be able to stop talking when you're giving directions. Some students won't understand the directions. It might be too complicated. You might make the games too complex and advanced. They might not respect the materials, the equipment. They might not respect each other. They might not be listening to you at all. These are going to increase behavioral issues as teachers. If they're hyperactive or if they wander off, then we have to focus on that one individual, which takes all the emphasis off everybody else. That's why it's really important to have peer mentors or paraeducators helping the main teacher. If they're a wanderer, if they're hyperactive, you need to have some type of structure in play or get them moving right away so that they don't have time to move around the gym. You should have them moving around the gym in a good way. Most common behavior issues we face as leaders are interrupter, immaturity, arguments, impulsivity, inappropriate touching and pushing, and pouting. So people that interrupt you, or the immaturity that can occur obviously in K through 12 settings, arguments that can occur between students, impulsivity to do something out of control, touching and pushing each other and pouting. These are going to be the things that we're going to face and that we have to have um, expectations for, and we need to categorize mild and severe kind of behavioral problems. So behavioral scenarios you might come encounter with that you can think about what you would do to and plan for. What if someone does a fanny flash or someone shows off something that they're not supposed to? This occurs. What if someone's chatting all the time? What are you going to do? What if someone has a high temper and gets really mad? What if someone spaces out in your class? What if someone doesn't want to do anything? And then what are you going to do if someone wanders off? These are all different behavioral scenarios that you may encounter as an educator, teacher, physical educator, adaptive physical educator. You have to know what to do in each of these scenarios, and then also have a behavioral plan in place to prevent these from occurring if this is something that occurs often. So behavioral support strategies: use pre-MAC, if then that statements. Here's an educational tutorial on the pre-MAC, which is probably the biggest support strategy for enforcing the right behavior. We want to ignore, redirect, reinforce, ignore behavior that is not harmful to others, property, and redirect the student to do something else, and reinforce reward that something else versus giving attention to the negative behavior. So instead of telling them what not to do, tell them, hey, if you do this task, you'll get a coin, or you'll have an option for big board choice later on, as opposed to focusing on the negative behavior. So focus on the skill at hand, focus on completing it and the reward they get for completing it, and then they will hopefully achieve what they wanted in the end game. So the reward is happy, cooperative students. It is not easy to change your style of teaching, so just understand that not a lot of educators are going to be adaptive, adaptable, compassionate, not yellers, proactive, all these things that we want you to be to increase effective instruction for behavior change. It takes concerted effort to try and teach behavior rather than react to it. It is rewarding to see our students happy and harmonious, but it takes work. So good luck. When it comes to behavior, it's hard to change repetitive behavior, but we can influence negative behaviors and hopefully be proactive in that we are able to structure our teaching so that they are going to be on task and they have choices and that they get rewarded for making the right choice. Thank you, everyone. I know this one was long, and a lot of them have been long. I love teaching about adaptive physical activity. So this completes the adaptive physical activity lecture series. Please email me or ask me questions about each lecture if you have them. I'll eventually create a follow-up lecture podcast for each presentation, answer any questions, and go over anything I missed. So please stay tuned. I do plan on speaking to my students about these lectures, and you, the learners, if you have questions about them, I hope to follow up each of these lecture series with a new lecture on that topic with answers to those questions. So let's just say I didn't go over something in depth, or I went over something too fast, or I didn't explain something well enough, then I will repeat and go over those things that I missed and reflect on giving you more of what you need to be a better adaptive physical educator or activity provider. All right. Appreciate everyone. Thank you for coming, and have a great day.